How can a rich, powerful man escape consequences so easily? I'm sure you've wondered why rich folk seem to get away with everything, while others end up spending the rest of their lives behind bars. You might think, well, money can fix anything, and you're not wrong. But in the grimy world of Hollywood, you need more than just money. In this video, we're diving deep into the murky depths of Hollywood, the powerhouse that drives the entire film industry. But there's more to this video than meets the eye. You'll also get to meet two mysterious figures who've remained hidden in the shadows of Hollywood's history. And now for the first time they're stepping into the limelight. Getting to know them will uncover the inner workings of Hollywood, a world that's been this way since day one and continues to thrive today. But hold on, there's even more in store. I've got some exclusive secrets to reveal, ones that have been kept under wraps until now. Behind all the glitz and glamour, there are some shocking events that will leave you speechless. When you head to the cinema, you don't give much thought to what's happening behind the scenes. But remember, it's not a movie, it's a harsh reality. For those of you with nerves of steel, I encourage you to stick around until the very end of this video. There I'll unveil the most spine-tingling secret of them all, the icing on the cake, so to speak. By the end, you'll definitely see things in a whole new light, unlike anything you've experienced before. When stars needed something to be swept under the rug, they summoned these guys. The rich, powerful and famous often believe they are beyond the reach of the law. In Hollywood, this created a lucrative demand, shady operatives willing to bend and break the rules for their clients. In that murky world between the 1930s and 1960s, no one was in more demand for this role than Eddie Mannix and Howard Strickling. These guys were willing to get their hands dirty, worked for some of the biggest names in entertainment. This shows that Hollywood can be a place of deception and moral corruption, where people will go to great lengths to achieve their goals and protect their status. Scandals in early Hollywood created the need for fixers. If everyone in the studio always did the right thing, we wouldn't need fixers. But, well, people aren't perfect, and things can get messy. Even in the early days of Hollywood, the movie business was a cash cow. Just like today, having a big-name star in a film meant big bucks for the studio. Well, let me introduce you to the Hollywood fixers. Meet Howard Strickling and Eddie Mannix, who buried unwanted scandals of old Hollywood. Howard Strickling's phone was always ringing. It could be Jean Harlow in a panic, worried that William Powell had gotten her pregnant, or a security guard letting him know that he had escorted a belligerent Spencer Tracy out of yet another bar. There was even that time when Marlene Dietrich called, shocking, after finding John Gilbert's lifeless body. In his role as MGM's head of publicity, Strickling managed all these scandalous situations involving the studio's stars. Between the 1930s and 60s, he collaborated with MGM general manager Eddie Mannix. They did everything to uphold the crafted public personas that MGM had established for its film stars. This involved either preventing harmful stories from reaching the media or, in cases where it was already public, ensuring that these stories vanished. Mannix and Strickling made for quite the odd couple. Mannix, a tough guy who rubbed shoulders with mobsters, he came under the radar of film executive brothers Nick and Joseph Schenck. In the years after the Arbuckle scandal, studios were dead set on protecting their stars and their hefty investments in them. Joseph Schenck, an agent who repped big shots like Buster Keaton and Marilyn Monroe, happened to represent Fatty Arbuckle too. Now Schenck would have seen firsthand the utter havoc that scandal caused for both his client and Paramount. Meanwhile, his brother Nicholas held a top spot at MGM Studios. The Schencks stumbled upon Eddie Mannix while he was slinging construction gear at their New Jersey amusement park. Mannix, a tough-as-nails guy with some questionable connections in the criminal underworld, got the call up to join MGM, and the rest, as they say, is history. On the flip side, Strickling was a sharp former journalist who made the switch to MGM's publicity team in 1919. But when they joined forces, they crushed every kind of scandal you can think of. Here's how the Manx Strickling fixing strategy played out. If a Hollywood star or starlet found themselves in a bit of trouble, they'd ring up either Strickling or Manx, and these two would dive into action. Strickling, with his journalistic know-how, would work his magic on any pesky publicist who were getting too close to the scandal they needed to bury. If things got really dicey, Strickland had a secret weapon. He'd hand journalists a different story, one that wouldn't tarnish the studio's reputation in exchange for their silence. It was a game of smoke and mirrors that kept Hollywood's secrets safe. While Strickling focused on keeping scandals out of the headlines, Manx dealt with the nitty-gritty, the real-life messes that the studio's top talents often found themselves in. Manx's role went well beyond fixing minor parking tickets or jaywalking citations. He sometimes went to great lengths to cover up serious crimes. There are allegations that he played a part in hiding an abuse charge against an MGM salesman. Manx might have had a hand in the death of George Reeves, best known for his portrayal of Superman on television. He might have also shielded actor Clark Gable from the consequences of a car crash that resulted in a pedestrian's death. This wasn't a one-time event. Now, get ready for the real deal. I'm about to unveil some scandalous cases where these fixers work their magic, and as a bonus, I'm spilling all the juicy details. Stick with me. A great example of this is Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. In 1918, he scored a huge 3-year, $3 million contract with Paramount Pictures, making 18 silent films. In 1921, he renewed his deal with Paramount for millions more. To celebrate, he parted with friends at a San Francisco hotel over Labor Day. The celebration ended up destroying Arbuckle's career. He faced manslaughter charges in connection to the death of Virginia Rapp, a 25-year-old actress. While Arbuckle was later acquitted, the entire ordeal had a devastating impact on his career and brought huge changes to the film industry. Shortly after Arbuckle's trial, the studios appointed Will Hayes as a censor. He imposed a ban on the former silent film star, preventing him from appearing on screen. Eventually they lifted the ban, but Arbuckle had to use the name William Goodrich to work on the screen again. When Harlow, Judy Garland, Lana Turner and other MGM actresses faced unplanned pregnancies, these two men arranged quick abortions. They kept these visits hush-hush with phony names and even made up illnesses. Jeanette MacDonald, she had an ear infection, and knowing all too well about Tracy's booze problems, Strickling set up what they called the Tracy Squad, a whole team with an ambulance, a doc and 4 attendants who were beefed up security. When those difficult stars refused Strickling and Manx's help, these fixers wasted no time throwing them under the bus. Take the case of closeted actor Nils Ather, for example. When he decided he couldn't keep up his marriage to vaudeville actress Vivian Duncan, Strickling gave the green light for a 1933 article in Screenland magazine. This article made people wonder why Ather wasn't living with his wife and child, hinting that his affairs with other women weren't the real issue. Before long, Ather found himself out of a job. One of the most shocking things the studio fixers did was when Loretta Young pretended to adopt her own biological daughter, Judy Lewis. Back in 1935, Young became pregnant by her co-star Clark Gable while they were filming The Call of the Wild. But Gable was married to his second wife, Maria Langham, at that time, and to make things even more complicated, it suggested that the encounter between Young and Gable wasn't consensual. Young, who was Catholic and against abortion, was in a difficult situation. Strickling, to keep the pregnancy under wraps, informed the press that she was on vacation. Later he attributed her absence to illness, but when she missed her sister's wedding, it set off a whirlwind of speculation among reporters. To address this, he arranged an interview between Young and a journalist from Photo Play, a friend of his. At this point, Young was almost 9 months pregnant. Throughout the conversation, Young remained in bed, surrounded by arranged pillows and blankets. To maintain the illusion, a studio nurse came in several times to switch out a fake IV bottle. what happened after. After Loretta Young gave birth to her daughter, the Hollywood machinery went into overdrive. At first, the baby girl stayed in a bungalow in Venice Beach for a few months before being placed in an orphanage. Over a year later, Young surprised everyone by announcing she wanted to adopt 2 orphan children. But here's the twist. She claimed the biological mother suddenly showed up to take back the second child, even though that child didn't exist. So in the end, Young raised Judy, her own biological child. The MGM fixers played a big part in carefully planning this elaborate story, which Young stuck to throughout her public life. She only revealed the truth to her daughter in 1966 and later in her autobiography published in 2000. In this complex situation, Strickling and Manx were simply doing what Loretta Young wanted. They thought they were protecting her best interests. But it's important to know that in their quest to safeguard the studio's reputation, they did some terrible things, especially in the case of Patricia Douglas. Patricia Douglas wasn't a famous name like Loretta Young. She didn't aim for Hollywood fame. She ended up there because her mother wanted to design movie costumes. She had appeared in musicals for Warner Brothers and Columbia Pictures, which brought her to an MGM casting call in 1937. She thought it was for another dancing role in a movie, but it turned out to be a party. This party was part of a 5-day MGM sales convention celebrating their successful year. According to the convention schedule from Vanity Fair, it was described as a stag affair out in the Wild West. By this point, the men had been drinking for 3 days straight. When Douglas and 120 other dancers in cowgirl outfits arrived at the studio-owned ranch, she slowly realized they were there as entertainment for drunk businessmen, and one of them had a particular interest in her. Douglas felt uneasy around David Ross right from the beginning. She attempted to avoid him by slipping into the ladies' room, but upon her return to the party she recalled that he and another man restrained her and forced liquor down her throat. She managed to break free, went to the bathroom to vomit, and then stumbled outside for some fresh air. It was there that Ross discovered her, forcibly took her to his car, and then you can imagine what happened. Douglas went to the hospital and was checked by an MGM-affiliated doctor. Surprisingly, none of the police at the party reported a crime. But she didn't give up. She filed a complaint against Ross with the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office and shared her story with the media. Manx, who had been at the party, rushed to protect MGM. He pressured possible witnesses to say bad things about Douglas. They made her out to be a liar who drank a lot, even though she didn't. Some who had supported her earlier changed their stories in court. Her criminal case failed, and MGM also managed to delay her civil lawsuit, which named Manx. She tried one more time, but her own lawyer turned against her. With no other options, her story was buried for decades. When asked about Douglas later, Manx is rumoured to have said, "We had her killed." Can you fathom being this vulnerable to those in power? Patricia Douglas, an innocent woman who did nothing wrong, suddenly found herself in a living nightmare, and the powerful culprits, they got away scot-free. Does that sound fair to you? During Manx and Strickling's time, people were really interested in celebrities' private lives. Manx and Strickling watched over the studio's stars carefully and did whatever it took to hide things that could hurt an actor's career or the studio's image. Strickling and Manx's days as fixers ended in the 1960s. Strickling retired in 1969 and Manx died in 1963, just as the old studio system was falling apart. There was no one to replace them because traditional fixers didn't make sense in a changing Hollywood where actors weren't tied to strict morality rules. But Fred Otash could be seen as an imperfect successor to Strickling and Manx's shady empire. Otash's wild tales were often met with doubt, even from himself. For example, he initially claimed he was at Lana Turner's home when her boyfriend, Johnny Stampanato, was stabbed by her daughter Cheryl Crane. He even said he removed the knife. but in a 1991 interview he called this accusation crazy. So much of Strickling, Mannix and Otash's work is tangled in conflicting reports and rumours, but if we consider their confirmed actions, it seems that these fixers, not the filmmakers, were the ones behind some of the most twisted tales in old Hollywood. Howard Strickling and Eddie Mannix were always operating in the shadows. Can you imagine the importance and secrecy of their relationships? But these partnerships came with risks. Think of them as playing a high-stakes game of cat and mouse with the FBI. During the McCarthy era, they dug into the backgrounds of every star, fearing connections to communism. They could have easily uncovered information neither Strickling nor Mannix wanted to see the light of day. When they found themselves in the FBI's crosshairs, Hollywood's elite understandably became quite anxious about the potential exposure of their secrets to the world. Fortunately for most of them, Howard Strickling and Eddie Mannix were astute enough to ensure that their treasure trove of wiretap recordings never fell into the hands of the authorities. Eddie Mannix and Howard Strickling may be a symbol of Hollywood's shady past, but his legacy is far from forgotten. In fact, a fictionalized version of Mannix, played by Josh Brolin, takes centre stage in the Coen brothers' 2016 film Hail Caesar. While Mannix's wild exploits are the stuff of Hollywood legend, he also left an unexpected gift for film scholars. He passed away in 1963 and was a meticulous record keeper during his lifetime. As part of his official duties at MGM Studios, he documented various financial aspects related to the studio and its films. This included detailed information about the production costs of every MGM film made from 1924 to 1962. It's known as the Mannix Ledger, part of the Howard Strickling Papers collection held by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. The enigmatic duo of Howard Strickling and Eddie Mannix played a crucial role in shaping Hollywood's history. They were the ones stars turned to when they needed their problems to vanish and their secrets to stay hidden. But their methods weren't always ethical, and they were willing to go to great lengths to protect the studio's image. Hollywood's fascination with celebrity lives has always been there, and Mannix and Strickling worked tirelessly to shield stars from scandals that could tarnish their careers. But their legacy is more than just scandal management. Mannix's meticulous record-keeping has become a treasure trove, offering insights into the financial workings of MGM Studios. So next time you watch a classic Hollywood film, remember that there's often more to the story than meets the eye. The glitz and glamour hide a world where fixers like Mannix and Strickling pulled the strings to keep the illusion intact. Their era might be long gone, but the lessons from their shadow dealings continue to shape Hollywood and remind us that behind the silver screen lies a complex web of secrets and scandals. And now, if you are curious why Ziegfeld Follies was much more than just a dance show, click on the next video where we dive even deeper into the untold stories that shaped the silver screen. Click now.